Good morning, first graders. Mrs. Johnson again. This week, we will be talking about sounds. Sounds are all around us. No matter where we go, if we listen carefully enough, we can hear sounds. What sounds can you hear when you're outside? What sounds do you hear when you're in the house? What sounds do you remember hearing at school? What sounds might you hear if you were in a barn? What sounds might you hear if you're at the park? How about at the lake? In this picture, we see two children making sounds. This little guy is going to play his drums, and it looks like he's not enjoying the sound that this little girl is making with her toy trumpet. Vocabulary words this week. Color. This bird is a bright color. Early. Early morning can be very quiet. Instead, I try to whisper instead of shouting. Nothing. There is nothing in that can. Oh, our marching band has a great sound. Thought. He thought the jet was much too loud. Scramble. Goats scrambled up the rocks. Suddenly. The sky suddenly lit up brightly. This week, we'll be talking about the ow sound, kind of like the sound you make when you get hurt. Ow! We can spell the ow sound with the OU and the OW. Like OU in the word found and OW in the word down. Loud, now, ground, brown, shouted. Remember, that ED sound at the end of a word means that it happened in the past. Growling, the ing means it's happening right now. Frowned, cloud, pound. Mouse, around, towel. We found a brown puppy in town. It does not growl or make loud sounds. Now, sound, out, house, bouncing, shouted, wow, crown, down, sounds. Repeat after me. Now. Sound. Out. House. Bouncing. Shouted. Wow. Crown. Down. Sounds. This week's story is realistic fiction. What that means is it could happen, but it's not a real story. So everything in here is possible. We're not going to hear any make-believe, but it's not a true story about real people. The title of our story is Now What's That Sound? We're going to read about two children who hunt for a sound. Tap, 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 rat-a-tat-tat. What's that sound? Asked Gilbert. It started early this morning. I thought it might stop, but it hasn't. Let's check out the garage, said Marta. I think Dad is making that sound. And here we see the sound in the background. Tap, 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 rat-a-tat-tat. Remember, when we see these quotation marks around sentences, it tells us that someone is speaking in the story. In this case, it's followed by asked Gilbert, so we know that Gilbert is the one who asked this question. Zing, zing, zing. Dad was in the garage cutting a board with his saw. Zing, zing, zing. This is not the sound, said Gilbert. This sound is smoother. Let's find Gramps, said Marta. He might be making the sound. They quickly ran to the back of the house to find Gramps. Gramps was sweeping the deck with a broom. Swish, swish, swish. No, this is not the sound, said Gilbert. This sound is much softer. Let's find Anna instead, said Marta. Maybe she's making the sound. They found Anna in the driveway. Anna was bouncing a ball. Bam, bam, bam. No, this is not the sound, said Gilbert. This sound is slower. This is hopeless, sighed Marta. Tap, 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 rat-a-tat-tat. There it is again, said Gilbert. He looked up at the tallest tree. Suddenly, he shouted, "Oh, wow! It's a bird!" Look at the color on his head, cried Marta. It's red, like a red crown. The bird scrambled up and down the tree. Tap, 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 rat-a-tat-tat. It's a woodpecker, pecking for bugs, said Gilbert. Yes, said Marta, and nothing else sounds like that. Tap, 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 rat-a-tat-tat. How are the sounds around you made? Sit quietly right now. Do you hear anything? What did you hear? How is the sound made that you heard? Can you make a sound that sounds just like it? Again this week, just like last week, we're talking about problem and solution. So in this story, the problem was that Gilbert and Marta could hear a new sound. They didn't know what it was, and so they had to go investigating to find out. To find out, their steps to finding their solution was first to check if Dad was making the sound. And if you remember, Dad wasn't making the sound. He was making a different sound with his saw. Then they checked to see if Gramps was making the sound. Gramps was making a sound with the broom because he was sweeping the deck. Then they checked with Anna to see if she was making the sound. She was making a very different sound by bouncing her ball. The solution was that Gilbert and Marta finally discovered that the sound was a woodpecker tapping on the tree. See how many sounds you can hear right now in your house and make a list. Tell somebody about it, or tell your teacher in Seesaw.